Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Next Chapter, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Fine Arts and Communication here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm also the interim dean of the college. In each episode, we feature an alumnus from one of our programs in the college. Today, I'm talking with Mariah Ward DiGrino, who graduated from WIU with a degree in music in 2000. Welcome to the podcast, Mariah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So 2000, it seems like, it just happened in our minds a few years ago, but what's going on in your life? I'm sure there's lots of people that would want to know, where are you and what's going on?
Wow. Yeah. It seems like thinking back, I guess 22 years ago, it's seems weird to say 22 years ago, but it's been that long. So I'm living in a suburb near Chicago, and I'm actually sitting right now in my office downtown. I work in a law firm called DLA Piper, and I am an attorney, if I can say that correctly. I'm a lawyer, practicing in real estate, land use development, kind of where real estate runs into government. So it could be zoning approvals, historic approvals, public-private finance, tax increment financing, development incentives, things like that. So that's where I'm sitting right now. I've got two beautiful little girls who are not so little anymore, growing up too fast. My daughters are 10 and 13. Sophia's 10 and Madeline, we call her Maggie, is 13. And so we're getting into the thick of the teenage years, that's for sure. And that's where we are.
That is so awesome. I tell you, and I love that view out your window. Hopefully that's the view.
Yeah, the one of the towers in the background. I've got my shades pulled, so the lighting is a little better here.
Nice. Well, let's talk about your origins. I like to always begin where it all started. And for you are from Macomb. You're a local person. And so now I always ask people, there's, of course, the term Macomb homie, which, both of my kids grew up here in Macomb, and they refer to themselves as that. Talk a little bit about what it was like growing up for you and how that may have impacted your own development.
I was thinking of growing up in Macomb as, of course, I grew up in the 80s, and it's every bit like those, 80s movies where kids are just like roaming free. And, we felt like we had the run of everything. And in reality, like we never left the block, we couldn't cross the street, but it felt like we had, the world sort of at our fingertips, and we were, there were no fences, there were no boundaries other than the streets themselves. And so we had, a great gang of kids growing up that we would, roam about with and play with, and spent a lot of summer afternoons at the local pool, Glenwood Pool. I spent a lot of time actually at the university as a kid participating in youth enrichment programs, usually around the arts, because I pretty quickly discovered, as a young kid, I had an affinity for everything music and everything, artistic and theater related, and music primarily. So pretty quickly was, spent a lot of time in the summer during those programs, working with Jan Lucy, who would produce, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and all that good stuff.
So when you say we, because when I first got acquainted with you and you said, I'm asking a little bit of personal information, you said, I am one of the Ward sisters. You say we, you're talking about your sisters, right? Too. And
yeah.
family.
Yeah, so that is who I'm talking about, and we had a neighbor as well who was part of our sort of core gang. We always joke, growing up on Lafayette Street, there's something in the water where that's the we. It's definitely the Ward sisters. I'm one of three girls who grew up in Macomb. All three of us went to Western, Two of us graduated from Western. The other one transferred out and finished her degree at, I think, the University of Illinois. But very much the we is the Ward sisters. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about your family, because I really think that sometimes, having the encouragement and support of parents that appreciate the arts and want a young person to have that as part of their lives really says something about, what they have in store for you as an individual. You must have felt that support early on, that you were encouraged to explore music and all the other aspects of, as you said, theater and some of the other things you were doing here in Macomb.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a lesson to be taken, my mom had us in it. Like we were, we were. I mean, on some level, you could say maybe we were overscheduled, but it certainly didn't really feel like that at the time. We did, and looking back, like I'm so grateful for all those crazy experiences. I played handbells in the church. We were in tap dance and ballet lessons, and wearing crazy outfits at ballet recitals and tap recitals, and I played oboe in the school band, bass drum in the marching band. Growing up in a town like Macomb, it's small enough that you really have the opportunity to do pretty much whatever you want, and you can dabble in everything and do decently at it. Whereas growing up in a larger community, it's just such a larger pool of people that you may have more opportunities to do various different things, but you really almost have to focus on to make a choice early in life. And I think that's one of the things I'm grateful for growing up in a town like Macomb. You don't have to make that choice early in life as to this is what you're going to be. You can be in music and still be in sports as well, and you can kind of figure out what you want to do. And then having the added layer of the resources that Western brings to the table just makes it that much of a richer experience, and adds to the opportunities that are available as a kid.
Did all those lessons and all those activities set forth sort of a discipline, a routine in your life that helped, establish something for you? Because, that was certainly a lot of demands on time.
It probably did. But I would also say it inspired just an ongoing curiosity about things. Piano lessons, certainly, there were certain stayed and true things. I started taking piano when I was 5, and there was definitely a period of time when I was complaining to mom about do I really have to practice? And I've gone through that with my own kids now, and
yeah.
It's just a period of time and you get over it. And I'm glad I stuck with it, and I'm glad that my mom primarily, stuck with it and continued to, insist, yes, you do need to practice. And because now, having been on that side of it, I certainly have a new appreciation for what she had. It's discipline for her as well.
Yeah.
It's really easy just to give in to your kid and say, forget it. But so I'm grateful for the discipline it instilled. But, we also, like I said, participated in so many other crazy things. We had mime lessons at one point and synchronized swimming in the summer. And, it just kind of, looking back, who has the opportunity to do that? And, it just kind of inspires this continued curiosity and approaching life with sure, I could give that a try. Let's see how that goes.
So at some point, did you say, I really like to do, you must have liked to play and perform your oboe, your instrument, right? At some point in time, you said, this is something I think I'm pretty good at.
Yeah. I really had a strong, like I said, affinity towards music early on. I started taking piano lessons through at the university. I think when I was maybe 12, I kind of graduated from the teacher I had been working with, and she said her suggestion that I move on to take lessons with, at the time it was Dr. Campbell at the university, and then same thing with oboe. I started playing that as in junior high, and quickly, I probably, because of the foundation that piano offered as well, and the discipline around that, just demonstrated I guess some natural talent with oboe, and, enjoyed sort of the probably the achievement that came out of that was, I'm sure part of it. But, it was something that I enjoyed doing. And, a large part of why I pursued a degree in music performance was because I just wasn't ready to give up playing. I wasn't ready to stop. And for lack of a better profession to pursue at that point in time, decided let's give this a try. Let's see how it goes.
So you come to WIU. What are some of your early memories of being involved? Were you involved with, I'm sure, with bands and ensembles and different things?
Yeah, I was. So as a music performance major, your activities are primarily music, certainly. So I played in the orchestra. I played in the symphonic wind ensemble. I played in, smaller ensembles that I would form with my, friends in the music department. I played in the Madrigal Dinner when Western would host the Madrigal Dinner. Mm-hmm. So I played in like the recorder band for that. That's a lot of fun. What else did I do? I played in the pit orchestras for, the musical theater productions. A lot of it, again, is just so much focused around, the music, that those become your activities. I think the only one I really couldn't do was marching band because, oboe. So.
So you must have developed some really good friendships with people that you, as you said, you're playing instruments along with, making some friendships, and also having some mentorship from professors within the music, within the School of Music. Yeah,
absolutely. As an oboe player, we have our double reed studio, and which we physically have a studio, or at least when I was there, we had a studio where you could go and we had the reed room where you could go and make reeds and kind of park your stuff and your equipment. And we had just had a great time in the reed room with the double reed studio. And Craig Hahn, and he and I played oboe together for so many years, and it feels like so many years, but really it was, the duration of our overlap, which was maybe 2, maybe 3, I can't remember. But just had a wonderful time, playing and bringing out the best in each other, and encouraging each other to be better players. And then my friend Linda Fess, of course, who plays the bassoon, who's another Macomb homie.
Yeah.
Ahead of me in class. Just had have a lot of really great memories of good friends there.
Are musicians competitive at all with each other?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thankfully, like we never, no one sabotaged anyone or, nothing like that, but for sure you're competitive. But it's, it's in the spirit of competition, and it kind of makes you better, and you drive each other to be better.
So while you're here at WIU, at some point in time, you finish up your degree, and then you take what you called a gap year, which a lot of people may understand was sort of a reset. What am I going to do? So talk a little bit about that, because I think that is a natural sort of thing that sometimes people are afraid to admit to, wanting to take a little bit of time off to find out where they're headed to next.
Yeah, I call it the gap year because it ended up being one. But I graduated, and I didn't really have a firm direction in terms of what I wanted to do or where I wanted to land. At this point in time, I had started to kind of realize, like, wow, a life in music performance is somewhat nomadic. It's a little uncertain, both in terms of geographically where you are, where you're going. You really have to follow, there are 30 people vying for 3 positions. And for me, I just kind of, realized, like, I really started to critically think about whether, could I, as the person I am, can I live with that kind of uncertainty and that kind of uncertainty, I guess. And so I took the year and I auditioned for grad school. I worked just worked kind of a day job at a nonprofit organization and taught lessons on the side and just kind of thought about what I wanted to do. And law had always been sort of in the background of things I might want to think about doing, largely because my dad, who is an accountant by training and spent his career at Western in the business department. And he in the early part of his career had the opportunity to do some forensic accounting and working with lawyers and seeing how lawyers are, and he really enjoyed, I think he enjoyed seeing what they did and thought their jobs were interesting. And so, that was a profession that was just probably never an opportunity for my dad. But I think if he had had his choice, would have maybe wanted to pursue something like that. And so that was always sort of an undercurrent theme growing up was, when we talk about what are you gonna do when you grow up,
right?
That was kind of a suggestion that my dad would always raise. You should look at law. He said you should either be a lawyer or a college professor. Because again, I think he was looking as someone in the administration, looking at the freedom that college professors have and the breaks, and thought that he's very envious of that. But he said you should either be a lawyer or a college professor. And so I started to think more seriously about what would law look like? And of course I had no idea, but again, in that spirit of let's just give this a try, I said, well, I'll take the LSAT, it's the law school entrance exam. I'll take the LSAT, see how I do and see where I can go from there. And I got a decent score on it and got admitted to University of Illinois, which is a decent school. So again, just figured, well, we'll see where this one takes me.
Well, and it's not surprising because we glossed over the fact that I think while you were here, you're an honor student. You graduated summa cum laude. You were an excellent student, so you had the whole world available to you, and you head into law school at U of I, and during that period of time, were there options available to you in what you were going to focus on, and how did you end up into the area of real estate? When you go to law school, it's 3 years. And everyone jokes when you come out of law school, you know nothing. You know how to find the law is really what law school teaches you. And okay.
it does teach you the basic principles and things like that. But when you go to medical school, for example, you've probably gotten an undergraduate degree in something related to medicine. But even after medical school, you go into a residency program, you go into, fellowship, other tracks. It's very regimented. That does not exist for lawyers. And so you go to law school, you do 3 years there, and then you're out and you're kind of thrust into the world and, figure it out. So when I was in law school, I, really had no idea what, area of law that I wanted to pursue. Again, you take kind of a broad range of courses that they require you to take. So you get, exposure to criminal law, to civil procedure. You get exposure to property is a basic class that you take. Contracts is another basic class you take. And then you can select, real estate courses or white collar crime or trial advocacy. I did kind of all of those things. I literally took all 3 of those courses. And it, again, it provides this kind of broad-based liberal arts. It's more consistent with kind of a broad-based liberal arts background, which I'm glad you mentioned the honors program at Western, because that was such an important part of my experience there was, again, getting that broad liberal arts background and being able to study through the honors program just kind of added, again, a layer of richness to my educational experience. But in terms of choosing a path for the law, again, it was a very organic process for me. When you're in law school, you spend, your after your kind of towards the end of your first year, you have some grades, you've got a semester's worth of grades, and you've got another semester coming. So you kind of figure out like how well you're doing academically. And there is kind of a point in time where you can undertake what's called a summer associate program. And it's where the law firms actually start recruiting into the law schools, and they do what's called on-campus interviews. And the law firms are, hosting networking events at the law school so you can get to know them. And of course, I have no idea what any of these law firms are. I don't know what they do. I don't, they're throwing out names as though I should recognize them, and I have no clue. So I kind of navigate that, figure that out. My law school roommate, actually at the time we weren't, we were still in first year. I had really good grades in law school, and I was thinking to myself, like, do I really want to go work for this large law firm? Do I want to go work a ton of hours and just be like a cog in the wheel and blah? Do I want to do this? I went to law school thinking I'm going to save the world. I'm going to, I'm going to go work for a nonprofit, or again, I really had no idea what that meant or looked like. But, I was kind of commiserating with one of my best friends, and I was saying, I don't think I'm going to go to on-campus interviewing. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's for me. Like these firms, they don't value pro bono. They don't, I don't know that my values align. And she's like, Mariah, you are the dumbest smart person I've ever met. Like, you are so stupid not to do on-campus interviewing. You have the grades. You absolutely have to do this. And her, coincidentally, her dad was at the time a partner at one of the law firms that was coming to campus, a firm called Piper Rudnick. And she's like, talk to my dad. He will tell you about the firm. He will tell you how they value pro bono. I hear him talk about this all the time. He will tell you, and he'll tell you what it's really like. And so I talked to him for a long time. And, again, I was expressing I want to do pro bono. And he said, we absolutely value all that. He said all the right things. And he said, look, just interview, see where it goes. Like, you have to interview. And so I took a couple of interviews. He snuck me in was able to squeeze me into an interview with Piper Rudnick. And I ended up getting a call back where I got to come to their offices. And there were a couple firms like that. And so I went to their offices, you meet people, and again, I have no idea I have no idea what these firms do or what they're really about. But I was really drawn to the people that I met at Piper Rudnick, and just kind of was able to pick up on, felt good vibes, I guess, from them. And, just to be quite candid, like as in contrast, another firm that I was interviewing with, they were, parading me around the office and promoting their work with gun manufacturers and the tobacco industry, and they're very proud of the defense they're doing of these companies. And I was like thinking to myself, like, I'm sure it's really important work and it's a big client, but I'm like, I might not lead with that. I don't know. So again, kind of picking up on my intuition about maybe that's not a firm I want to be aligned with. Not to say we, represent great people all the time, or, it's for us as lawyers, it's not so much about, it's as much about making sure somebody is properly represented.
Yeah.
So I got an offer, thankfully, from Piper Rudnick, and accepted a summer associate program. And this is my, I guess, really long way of saying, when I was as a summer associate, again, got to meet great people in the real estate group, got to learn kind of about what does it mean to be a real estate lawyer versus a litigator or versus a corporate lawyer. And again, just kind of felt like my people were in real estate, and my people were, and the people in real estate that I really enjoyed hanging out with and working with were doing land use work. And because a lot of it is like community development and working with people, and, property and real estate seems so dry and boring, and, you're dealing with inanimate objects, but what we deal with are, the people that inhabit those spaces. And I think that's why I was drawn to what I do now, which is, we deal with people, and we're helping create the spaces where people live and work and play. And the core of what I do is help my clients understand the people that they're building for, and help communicate to those people to, advocate for the development approvals that my client might be seeking. So that's how I guess that's my really long path to, very organic is kind of the theme, like, let's give this a go and see where we go from here is, how I ended up where I am.
Well, good people find good ways to do their work. And that seems to be your story, which is fascinating because, as you said, you see the restoration of buildings, of older buildings, of neighborhoods, of things that could be lost, that could be forever. I mean, I think you mentioned your work with the post office building there. Can you highlight for some of our listeners and our viewers some of the things that you've been involved with that you think are pretty significant things that you're glad to be a part of? So
the historic stuff is it's a real treat for me to deal with projects like that, because I geek out on history and I love it. So for me to be able to walk into, an old building that needs some love and attention, and to hear about what it was in its prime, and to then be able to see it come back to that is just the ultimate, in satisfaction and fulfillment. The post office is, for those of you who aren't familiar with the old Chicago post office building, it's if you're at all familiar with Chicago and having driven to Chicago, if you drive down 290, you drive not under or around or over a building, you drive through a building, and you drive through the post office. So it's that enormous, it takes up 2 entire city blocks, was, built as the original mail distribution center for the city of Chicago and the region. And its current size, the 2-block size, was really built in response to the mail order catalog business that Sears and Montgomery Ward had. And when you look back at the history of the post office and what it was, mail for us today is so, you get junk mail and maybe some bills and that's it. I mean, the post office as a building in its prime was a place where, a lot of people were cycling in and out of that place. I mean, people were receiving mail multiple times a day. People were going physically to the post office to pick up their mail in a way that you just don't do today. It had a restaurant. It had, there's a chemistry lab. When we walked through the building, when it was, before it was being rehabbed, there was a chemistry lab, so that they could do forensics on mail. They had, mail sorting facilities, these floors that were, over a block long, where, giant, everything was the size, Gotham size, right? It's not double hung windows, it's triple hung windows. It's, mail chutes that I could slide down like it was a playground slide, and these enormous, conveyor belts. Everything was just on this enormously grand scale. And, you hear about the history and you start thinking about, how people lived their lives and interacted with this. And it becomes really, especially poignant when you think about the fact that, this is the building where, soldiers' bodies were delivered when they were coming home in caskets during World War II, and the volume of that happening. And, it's really just a rich fabric and tapestry of history and how people lived. And, same thing with like a place like Navy Pier, which is another project that I worked on, which is, a historic space with the so-called head house, and then on the ballroom on the East End. And you think about that being the training facility for the Great Lakes Naval Station. And there are, many planes sitting in the bottom of Lake Michigan that, were casualty of training accidents and things, and obviously never retrieved because it didn't make sense. But there were aircraft carriers at one point sitting in Lake Michigan, and these planes were taking off and landing there. And you had soldiers, you had Coast Guard and naval personnel coming in and out. The University of Illinois had its campus there at one point. And So it's just a really interesting way for me to geek out on history and to see how the city evolved, and a really important part of my career that I get a lot of pleasure from.
And so now you're making it sound very interesting to be a real estate attorney.
Right.
For people, I'm sure, are saying, well, if she got to do that kind of stuff, well, now she's making it interesting. And one of the things I want you to talk about, if you could, you've been part of some opportunities to be a part of an all-female executive group. And can you talk a little bit about the challenges of just being involved in what can be sort of a male-dominated, profession, and how important it is for you to be a part of a group like that?
Yeah, it's and again, the post office was sort of a kind of a watershed moment for me in that experience as well. I mean, I am most of the time, and most is, 90% of the time, I am the only woman in the room. That number is probably coming down lately, but particularly on the private sector side, I am very frequently the only woman in the room. And that's intimidating. I mean, let's be honest. So, it's just, it's intimidating for several reasons. One, because I look really young. I mean, a humble brag.
What you do.
It's not, I mean, I joke, like someday I'll appreciate it, but like, I look really young. I mean, I've been mistaken for the paralegal. I've been told to get coffee. I mean, all the tropes about women in the boardroom and women in spaces like that. I mean, it's, I can joke about it, but it's because it's just so absurd. But it is still very much a male dominated environment. And so the post office was an interesting opportunity because one of the lead architects on the project is a woman. And the way we started off the project by having these bi-weekly meetings. Every other week we'd gather at the architect's office, and it just so happened to be the group dynamic that she played sort of a lead role in bringing everyone together. And she made a point of, one, inviting me to these meetings, but also made a point of giving me a speaking role and giving me an agenda item and something to talk about. Because I kind of suffer from, several different handicaps here. Like, one, I'm a woman in the room of all men. Two, nobody ever wants to hear from the lawyers. Everyone groans, like all the lawyer jokes, we hear them all the time, but, nobody really wants to ever hear from us. And nobody ever wants to have us in meetings because, it's running up the bill or blah, blah, blah. So, she made a point of inviting me to the meetings and making it meaningful and calling on me in the meetings and kind of engaging in almost these micro behaviors that put me at the table. And there were a couple of other women in the room that, she was doing that with as well. And we all kind of pick up on it, and we do it with each other. And then what was really fascinating was, we're around a table of like 20 people, and there's like I said, probably 4 women in the room, and there's probably 5 more guys sitting in the back. And these are like guys who come from the construction industry. Like, they really are coming from a male dominated background and a very aggressive, background and, hard construction work. And what was so fascinating and funny was they started to kind of engage in those behaviors too. Like, her inclusivity about it was contagious in a way that I don't think was conscious on their part. So it kind of promoted this just atmosphere of inclusivity and listening to people and like wanting to hear multiple points of view. And it was so refreshing to be on the receiving end of that and to be able to pass that on and to see like what a productive outcome that resulted in, and how good it was for the project and for the client, and just a roaring success in terms of that behavior. So that was, so we joke, we have the women of the post office, and our group of women, and there are some other women other than the four that I referenced. We have there's a key woman over at the city of Chicago who manages the historic preservation reviews. There's a woman in the state historic preservation office that was heavily involved as well. And then, some other women who we like to get together as the women of the post office. So
that is such a great story. And I'm so happy for you, because I think of my own daughter, and I think, I would want somebody looking out for her, like somebody's looked out for you, way I think you're probably looking out for the next person that's coming behind you. And so that's great. And the other thing that I would love to have you talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier about the you're wanting to do some pro bono for some, and you end up finding a cause. And can you talk a little bit about working for the Greater Chicago Food Dispensatory?
Right, it's the Greater Chicago Food Depository.
There we go.
And
Thank you.
And the background behind it is it's Chicago's food bank.
Okay.
But at the time that the food depository was being organized and instituted, there was some, this is like 30 plus years ago, so well before my time. But there was some law or rule that prevented it from calling itself a bank, because it wasn't a financial bank. So that's why it's not called. Otherwise, it would probably be called Chicago's Food Bank, Greater Chicago Food Bank. But so the Greater Chicago Food Depository is Chicago's food bank. They serve Cook County, but they are very much a leader in the food banking world, and a thought leader, advocacy leader. The executive director of the organization is also on the board of Feeding America, which is kind of the national food bank, the organization that brings all of the food banks like Greater Chicago Food Depository together. And so I have the privilege of acting as the pro bono general counsel for the Greater Chicago Food Depository. Again, this is an opportunity that came to me through the relationship that the Food Depository has had with the law firm here, now called DLA. Of course, originally Piper Rudnick, and before that, Rudnick and Wolf. And so the Food Depository has grown really alongside our law firm. Someone from the law firm has acted as the general counsel for the Food Depository for the last, since the late 70s. And we end up acting as kind of the outside legal department for the Food Depository. So the general counsel's role is to provide strategic advice, to provide advice and counsel related to governance matters, presiding at board meetings. But what's so exciting and thrilling about holding that role is the opportunity to have a voice in terms of strategic advice and counsel, because it's not just, they obviously come to us with legal questions and legal problems, but the opportunity to have a seat at the table for to have your voice valued and your opinion valued on issues that are not just basic legal issues, but involve food banking, and it's just a really, really fulfilling place to be. So I've acted in this role since I think 2013 or 14. We always joke that the person who inhabits this role, for whatever reason, the universe kind of brings that person to the organization at the right time. And one of the people who inhabited the role before me was a labor and employment lawyer, and they had a massive labor and employment issue that she ended up helping navigate them through. It just so happens I'm inhabiting this role, and during my tenure, the Food Depository is undertaking a massive facility expansion. So it's been really fulfilling to be able to be involved in that decision-making process in a way that I, as the lawyer for a developer, wouldn't ordinarily be involved in it. But I've been able to sit in on architect interviews and helping draft requests for proposal, and thinking about, strategically, what is it that you want to do here? What are your goals? And how can we help find the right consultants for that? And so it's been a really fulfilling part of my career is to be part of that organization and to see what they do, and just really proud to be in any way close to that organization. They are so amazing at what they do. I mean, it's astonishing how effective they are at getting food to hungry people. And I know they will say they are so grateful for the partnership that we bring, because it allows them to be aggressive. You know, they know that DLA and Mariah have their back. And so they know, you know, if they want to be aggressive about something and we give them, you know, that green light, yeah, you go for it. You know, they know we have their back and they feel comfortable doing that.
So one of the things that we've found in discovering your story, Mariah, is that even though it seems very organic and sort of like how river water finds its way eventually to the sea, you have had some help along the way. And I think that you mentioned that, especially for somebody in a position like yours, that it can be very demanding. You and your husband found ways to, when you keep the ability to raise a family and still be able to do the kind of work that you do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, he's another Macomb homie, although he didn't go to Western. So. But
That's okay.
my husband is Sam DiGrino. And for those of you who know or remember Nick DiGrino,
Yeah.
He is Nick and Susan DiGrino's oldest son. So Sam and I connected after, you know, probably after college, and you know, fell in love and got married, and you know, here we are. So, but we've like you alluded, you know, we've had to really think outside the box in terms of traditional gender roles. I mean, we both grew up in a house that was very, you know, the gender roles were very defined and very consistent with, you know, what you would expect for the prior generations. In my case, my mom stayed home from work. For a while, she did go back eventually, but, you know, both of our parents had very, you know, heteronormative, defined gender roles for the household. And so when Sam and I, you know, embarked on our professional careers, you know, we really had to rethink that. You know, I started working. I'm a couple years ahead of him in school, so I finished law school, and then he started law school after I had finished, and so I was working full time here while he was in law school. You know, eventually he started his career, and just he ended up choosing a career with an organization that provides free legal services to low-income clients and senior citizens. And his organization is just on a different pace than DLA Piper. And, you know, so his office closes at probably 4:55, the lights are off, and he has a lot more regularity in his schedule and always had a lot more control. Whereas I'm working this job that requires a lot of hours, requires me to just be available at all hours, and to really it was a little harder for me to set boundaries. And, you know, part of that is probably a little self-imposed. I'm, you know, again, kind of trying to blaze a path, and as a woman, and you don't want anything to get in the way of that. And so looking back, you know, I probably could have set more boundaries, but I didn't really feel like I had that choice at that point in time. But, you know, we had to really rethink about how are we going to organize our lives and how are we going to organize our household, and required a lot of, you know, very direct conversations about, like, no, Sam, I need you to own the laundry. I need you to own it. Like, I need you to own all of it. I can't tell you to do it. I can't remind you. Like, it can't even be in my decision, you know, my list of decisions or things to think about. Like, I need you to own it. And so we've kind of, you know, we joke, and thankfully he loves to cook. So he's an amazing cook. And I am absolutely the beneficiary of that. But he's also, you know, he's always picked up the girls. He was responsible for drop off and pickup. he owned all the dentist appointments. He kind of picked up all those roles that like my mom and his mom picked up. And it's been really, just really, I've been so grateful for the way that he's embraced that role. I have this awesome picture of Sam with Sophia, who was, I guess this is probably 5 years ago at the time. She's probably like 5 years old. I've got a awesome picture of Sam with Sophia on his shoulders. And he's standing in front of the Capitol in DC. And we were at the Women's March in 2017. And I told him, like, in the lead up to this, I just kind of said to him, I was like, Sam, I feel like for the girls, we just need to be there. Like, we got to go. And he was like, let's go. So I'm starting to tear up about it because it was just, he's so amazing. He drove us in one stint, like from Chicago we stayed with a friend in just across the border in Delaware, and then took the metro into the thing. He drove all night, got up, had probably like 4 hours of sleep before he had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to get us all out the door for this march. Did the march, got in the car, and drove us home. And so I have this awesome picture of he's driven all night. He's had like 4 hours of sleep. He's, just getting his girls where they want to go. And so there's this awesome picture of him, with Sophia on his shoulders. And I think I posted it to Facebook, and I had some caption about like, just this guy is, he's there for his girls. He's there. He drove them halfway across the country, no questions asked, was there to just be, so they could be part of this, important moment in history, and to just, be there. And I think the caption, I can't really remember it exactly, but it embodied for me, that act on his part just embodies something that's so important, which is just being an ally and being there. He can't take on the burdens as a woman, or, he can't take that off of us, but, he can be there and be that ally and support. And so, one of the themes that came out of that Women's March for us was we talked about what it means for the personal to be political, and talked to our girls about what that meant. And, that it means that even though something isn't affecting you personally, it's not your problem personally, it's still something you should care about. And it's still something that you should show up for, and to, not be a bystander about, be an upstander. So, that's Sam. He's been our upstander and our support, and it's been a really, again, fulfilling part of my life to have him as a partner.
That is such a great story. And I'm glad that you shared that, because I think that's an important thing for any young person to consider as they go out, and because life can be very difficult on your own, as you navigate all the challenges, and I'm so happy for your success, Mariah, and I'm happy that as both two Macomb people are up there doing some great things, and I'm just very happy for you. Our last question is always about recommendations that you might have for a student, somebody that's, much like yourself, trying to find her way, trying to say, what are my talents? What am I going to give to this world? What kind of recommendations do you have?
Get out of your head. Just whatever's holding you back, just set it, push it, shove it down deep, push it aside, whatever you need to do. Go to that event, go meet that person, go without any expectations. I think one of my regrets in my professional career is thinking I need to have an agenda, I need to have an outcome, and those are all very important things. But, just going to meet with somebody with no agenda, no expectations, don't, have maybe some expectations, but like, don't, that shouldn't be the reason for doing something or not doing something. I'm so glad, again, that I was able to have all of these crazy experiences that inspire intellectual curiosity, and, just feed that curiosity, be curious, just get out of your headspace and, do it. See where it goes.
And thanks for being on the podcast. I appreciate your time and sharing your story.
My pleasure. It was really, really fun to do this, and I appreciate it.
And thanks to all those that are watching or listening to the episode. We will continue to have alumni from all of our college departments on the podcast. We hope that you will continue to support our departments and schools at Western Illinois University. So until the next episode, stay safe, take care, and God bless.